Welcome to the More Than More podcast, where we discuss building meaningful, impactful businesses, careers, and lives through real estate.
All right, everyone. Hey, it's Dylan and Angela. We are here today to give you some super practical words to say. We are heading towards the shortest possible scripts when responding to objections that buyers and sellers may have. So I'm super excited about this. I think you guys will find it helpful. So you have even better words. And we got some resources that you guys can check out and follow along as we go. So Dylan, why don't you tee it off? Where did this idea kind of start percolating in your head?
Well, it's an interesting time right now. And change does interesting things. So we got a lot of new problems that we're dealing with, and a lot of changes in our industry and changes in our conversations. We're trying to think through new issues. And so for 20, 30 years in our industry, we've been answering the same questions.
Yep. Yeah.
And actually that's what we're going to cover today. Is the interesting thing about objections and conversations about these sorts of problems is that there only tends to be so many things that people come up with, but change is interesting. And we're going through a huge change in our industry right now.
Yep.
And that change creates a context where new problems show up, new ideas, new questions, new concerns, and new objections.
Yeah.
So, we were in Cedar Rapids the other day, and you guys had put together some really cool scripts for seller objections regarding the commission changes that are coming. And you guys have done a great job prepping everyone. And so we were talking through that at Cedar Rapids, and I was watching the room, and not to call out Cedar Rapids exclusively.
We love Cedar Rapids,
They're great. But I've noticed this over the years, and it was just really poignant that day. We have a tendency as real estate agents, when we, in the backstage in our team meetings, talk about how to handle these objections.
Yeah.
We have a tendency to discuss them in the third person, backstage, sort of like about why the client has that objection. We'll talk about the psychology. We'll talk about why they are wrong.
Yeah. Why would they even think that, or how are they thinking that way?
The misconceptions.
Yes.
We'll cover all the reasons why it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And we'll talk conceptually maybe about how we might respond. What we tend not to do is rehearse actual responses.
Yeah.
And even when we do, we rehearse them backstage in a very cavalier, roundabout way. And we walk out the room thinking a little bit about what people are coming up with, what questions, what concerns they have.
Yeah.
But we don't walk out any better.
Actually having answers. Yeah.
And so that was the first thing that I noticed. We were discussing these objections a lot. The second thing I noticed is that we have a tendency to get really defensive. Like, what the heck? Why are these people?
Why are they asking this? Yeah.
And the third thing I've noticed is that when we do then tend to actually get in front of our clients and have conversations with them, our responses, I think as a function of this, they tend to be very long, and they tend to be somewhat argumentative. And that's just a function of we haven't actually rehearsed and put the reps in for being locked and loaded on a great response on these questions. So this came up. We actually had an interesting debate about it in Cedar Rapids, and I made a commitment that what I would do is put together some materials for everyone to rethink a little bit about how we address objections and how we need to be better equipped to handle, whether it's these objections or others.
Yeah.
And so I think what we're going to cover today is a little bit of the psychology of objections, a little bit of rethinking the context.
Get in the right mindset about them first, right?
And then I think we're going to drop some particular shortest possible scripts for our agents to be using in the context that are coming up a lot
Today's
today.
buyers and sellers, yeah.
So, I guess we just jump in, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So let's start with, I'm just going to start with like objections.
Yeah.
Let's just step back for a little bit.
Think about what they are, right?
Well, I think years and years ago, and I think it was, it might have been Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry's dad, but there was another context with Floyd Wickman. These are the old
school sales guys.
Which, interestingly enough, like both of them, their kids have become leaders in the industry. Because do you know that Floyd Wickman's son is Gino Wickman that wrote Traction?
Oh, no, I totally missed that.
Unbelievably cool.
Yeah.
So both of these guys are the grandfathers of scripts and dialogues and how to handle stuff. Agree with them, disagree with them, doesn't matter. I learned a lot from them. And early on, one of the things they taught was to have me rethink some of my understanding of what's going on in a discussion with a client when objections show up.
Yeah.
And so some of that will carry into this conversation. But the first thing is we just need to have our brains prepped when we walk into a conversation with a client to understand that objections are, they're not a personal insult. They're not an affront. They're not a challenge. They're a normal, rational thought that people have along a journey. So objections are normal. And And typically where they show up is, example that's good to use is you meet with someone that's thinking about looking at homes. They're scared. This is new. They've never done it before. They've got a whole bunch of questions and concerns and like, how does this work? And how do we get paid? And you answer all those questions. And maybe in that context, a couple of small objections came up, but you addressed them and then you moved on.
Yeah.
Well, now we've been looking at houses and now they're used to this. This is their new normal.
This is their new normal. Yeah.
We're looking. And we get to the point that it's time that you can see they fall in love with the house.
Yeah.
They're ready to write an offer.
They're ready to write.
We know what they need to do next.
But now,
all of a sudden,
that's
it's
new
a
and
whole
scary.
new for them.
Yeah.
And so when we say, hey, what we probably need to do is get together and sit down and talk about how to get this offer put together, a bunch of objections might show up. Like, we're not ready, or we need to talk to our parents, or, well, hold on, maybe we need to look at some more.
Yep.
First thing you need to do in your brain is go, no, this is normal. This is a human being in a new situation. I do this every day. They don't.
They don't, exactly.
And I need to change my mind to understand. Normally what's going on is people are pausing. Objections show up when someone comes up with a new potential corner, a new obstacle in their brain, and they're just trying to push pause. So objections are normal. They show up when people are paused, and we need to think that these are innocent, reasonable, natural questions that normal people need to address in their minds before they can move forward.
Yeah, I agree.
The second big point about objections that everybody needs to understand, and this was super key, I learned this early on, there's only so many.
Yeah.
Now, I suppose people can come up with all sorts of crazy
variations and things, yes.
99% of the time, there's somewhere around 30 to 50 objections that tend to show up inside of a normal sales context in our environment. And the reason this is so important is it's not like every day we show up into a brand new world and
having no idea how the conversation is going to go.
We're not creating the wheel every day on handling these responses. Yeah. So it is incumbent upon us to think through the 30 to 50 objections. What are the big ones?
Yeah.
And to be rehearsed and well thought through in how we want to respond to those. So there's only so many people tend to have the same objections over and over again. And that means we can be prepared.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I want to say on this regarding objections, just thinking through this before we get into some of these scripts is, we just need to change our psychology. So this defensive thing that happens is a function of, well, it's really quite belligerent if you think about it.
Right.
Because I'll begin with the end. The end is that when we buy a car, when we buy...
I was thinking the same thing. Yep.
Anytime we're in a large transaction, we as realtors out in the world, there's moments along the journey where we go, whoa, I don't know. I want to push pause.
Yeah.
And what we do is we say things like, no, I'm just looking. Or we say things like, well, I need to talk to my wife first.
Yep.
And really what we're saying is, I'm nervous, afraid, and I'm not ready to pull the trigger on this yet. And when we do it, it feels totally normal. But when people do it to us in our sales, well, we just don't think about it correctly. And so it's not personal. It's not because you aren't valuable. You have similar objections when you're buying things.
Yes, you do. And
so what we've got to do when we're guiding a human being through a very, very crazy, large, complex transaction is we need to, when the objections show up, we need to just set our ego aside, take a big breath, and then make room. The way I say this is make room for normal human beings to ask normal human being questions.
Yeah.
And I think that changes the whole game when we approach it with this. Objections are normal. There's only so many. We need to be rehearsed on them. And let's approach these as normal human questions that have to happen in order for people to feel at peace and at rest so that they can move forward.
And I think some of that mindset, honestly, is because we don't have an answer, right? Like, so some of it, it's almost like our own, like, fear, like,
fight or flight.
Like, I feel like that kicks in sometimes because we're like, how do I answer that question? So I feel like then we may get defensive because we're like, what do we do, and stumble forward through it too. But we so have objections when we're doing these big things. So I think if people can put themselves in their shoes and just go, okay, these are normal questions. These are going to come up.
Empathy, right?
Yes, definitely.
If I wasn't the realtor in this situation and I was the buyer, I might ask a similar question. And I think that changes things. The metaphor that I used with the Cedar Rapids crew that I think was kind of fun, it just popped in my head, but I'm picturing a person and, they have a natural question at a natural benchmark in the sales process. And I just picture it as like a little bubble, like one of those thought bubbles that pop up in a cartoon.
Okay.
And the bubble pops up and it's a natural human question at a benchmark in the sale. And it makes sense. It's reasonable. They should ask that question. Any normal person would. They don't do what I do for a living.
Yeah.
Our goal needs to be, and I called it locked and loaded. Like what we can't do in that moment is when they come up with a question, be defensive, be caught off guard. this is one of the 40 questions that people always ask. What we need to do is take that breath, set our ego aside and go, okay, my goal is to help this normal human being with this normal question, but I've got to eliminate this thing before it like floats up into the air and becomes this giant concern that doesn't get addressed. And so locked and loaded in my mind means I need to
respond.
Have
I need
something
to be
ready to respond quickly and on the spot in a normal, rational way.
Yes.
And what's interesting about this is that you don't have to always have the best response. The metaphor I use is you don't need to have a 50 caliber like rifle ready to like annihilate their objection. That's not the idea. The idea is we got to have something ready that makes sense, that addresses the concern so it can be eliminated from their heart and their mind so that we can keep the conversation moving forward. Yep. So I think what I described to that crew was, don't need a 50 caliber rifle, a pellet gun will do.
Yep.
And then in time, as we grow in our sales skills and our people skills, we'll develop better and better responses to the natural set of questions that already exist.
Absolutely.
So a good, succinct response is good enough. You don't need a barrage because that's the other thing we do. A quick response is great and then leaves room for it to percolate and for them to think it through and to ask questions. What we tend to do is just drown them in a defensive, argumentative response that frankly makes them feel, well, hold on, it seems like there might be something to this question.
Yeah.
Because you seem like you're fighting pretty hard right now. That doesn't happen up here. That happens more like in their veins.
Yeah. I'm definitely guilty of, and I don't feel like mine are usually defensive answers. I go to like educate because I'm like, ooh, they're missing something and I got to educate. And I am definitely guilty of using too many words.
Too many words.
Shocking.
So yeah, great objection handling then is about being locked and loaded, having a great response ready for all of the standard objections that you should anticipate. And they don't have to be perfect responses. They do have to be succinct, non-argumentative, and they need to help someone move forward.
Yes.
Because that's what they're doing. There's a new concern in their mind, and we need to help them move across that bridge as quickly as they can. And then make room for a conversation around that question in a non-argumentative or solicitative way, right? That's what we're trying to do with great objection handling.
Absolutely.
So let's jump to the title of our podcast here. I came up with this phrase, and maybe someone can help me name this something better.
I think it makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I call it the shortest possible script.
Yep.
And shortest possible script really is a way to describe everything we just talked about. It's a response that's succinct and well thought through and rehearsed. But I think the essence of it is, well, it's the essence.
Yeah.
Your response needs to be not the perfect words, not the perfect rehearsed script, but it needs to be the well thought through essence of what you want your response to be to this particular question. And if you can have the shortest possible script locked and loaded in your mind, then when one of these natural objections show up, the shortest possible script is the framework through which you're going to answer.
Yeah.
What is the thing you want to guide people towards when they ask this type of question? The words they ask might be slightly different, but the essence of their objection is
still going to be the same. Yep.
It's going to be number 27.
Yeah.
And you need to have a well thought through, hold on, where do I want to guide people on question number 27?
Yeah.
Because your sales style and the way you lead people and the way you help your clients is probably not going to change person to person.
Right.
And so shortest possible script is a sentence, a phrase, or even a word sometimes that sums up your response. It provides you the path to respond with. I think what's super important about this is it also allows you to internalize the response. So rather than having a script that you have to memorize,
some long thing, yes.
What this does is allows you to have thought through the essence of where you're going, memorize in a way the shortest possible script. But once you have that, you can modify it, you can tweak it, you can add it into a larger context where you elaborate with them as they ask more questions.
Can be slightly tweaked for the person as long as you have that kind of, I agree.
And then what that does is because you respond with the shortest possible script that encapsulates the essence, and then you leave room for discussion, it opens a door to a more natural flow of conversation around your response.
Right.
And that allows them, your counterpart, to maybe self-discover in a way through conversation the reason why that answer is the one that you've picked. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
A few things I think are worth noting. One, it also presents a different level of confidence and clarity.
I agree.
So when I mumble through my answer,
Oh yeah.
that puts out a certain vibe. But when I respond,
like they seem unsure, right? Like that's not great.
And defensive or argumentative.
Yeah.
And so naturally, the harder someone pushes on you, the more your natural inclination is to push back. But what this does is it portrays confidence and clarity and professionalism.
Yeah.
And opens the door for conversation. And then also the best part is these are easy to remember.
Yeah.
So we got a handful of these that we kind of put together.
Yeah.
We got a little resource for you guys. And maybe before we jump into them, I want to say one more thing. These aren't the answers.
Only answer. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Every one of you are going to have to develop your, I keep wanting to say answers. I'm just going to speak like me, answers.
I start speaking.
You're gonna have to develop your own answers to these questions. And especially in the context that we're in right now, there's a lot of change. Some of us are thinking through, how are we going to handle commission? How do we handle our buyer's agency? Are we going to push for exclusive or aren't we? That's your call.
Yeah.
We're giving you guidance on that, but you're going to have to make smart business decisions. The issue here isn't, here's the responses we suggest. The issue here is these are responses that encapsulate the idea of using the shortest possible script as a methodology to be locked and loaded and handle objections.
Actually have an answer.
That will evolve and that will grow and that'll get even better in time.
Yeah. So I love these that are very, timely, right? Like these are in this time of change. These are a lot of the objections you are getting right now. So I think hopefully you find this helpful. And you'll notice these are some of the similar ones that we did have longer answers for before that we have made more succinct for you. So we're just going to kind of run through a couple of these, starting with the seller side. I've got one teed up for Dylan and he's going to respond. So I definitely know our agents are getting this one. So why should we start out by offering the buy-side commission?
Well, the simple answer is because it's the best way to net the most on your sale.
Okay, interesting. Maybe that sounds. What do you mean by net? Like, what does that mean? Like, I feel like they would follow up with like some more following up questions there.
So let's pause there for a second, though. What's the essence of my response? This is a natural question. Like, if I've heard that I don't have to offer buy-side.
So why would I?
Why would I? And if you don't believe that is the best way for them to net the most, then maybe that's not the route for you to go down. But I do believe that right now. Yeah. I do believe that no matter what, buyers are going to be asking, they're going to have buyer's agency agreements. Yeah. They're going to, if you're a great agent, you're looking for 3% from your buyers. Yeah. And if that's the case, you're going to be embedding that into the contract. Mm-hmm. And so in most cases, it is going to be best for the seller to be offering that in some way, shape, or form in order to position their property in a way to maximize
their buyer
showings.
pool. Absolutely.
So the essence of the response is that it's the best way to net. Mm-hmm. The elaboration on that, which is what they will look for, is and we've written some of this down, but look, the bottom line is that, well, it's what I just said. Yeah. Great buyers, qualified, ready, willing, and able buyers are going to be working with agents. Those agents are going to have buyer's agency agreements with their clients. Mm-hmm. And more than likely, they're going to be negotiating in the commission as a concession in the contract, which is how that works now in Iowa. Yeah. And so the best way to position your property to be the one that we maximize your bottom line is to maximize the number of buyers who want to offer on your property. Mm-hmm. And the way to do that is by eliminating all the potential roadblocks, all the obstacles. Let's make yours the one that they can't wait to offer on, and let's make them focused on only one thing: price.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's make this so that we can negotiate the price up by not having them, by complicating the deal about how they're going to have to pay their agent financially. Exactly. And then what I found is that by doing that, we can position your property to be the one that the most number of people look at, consider, make offers on, and that's how we net the most on the sale. Yeah. Good. And then, the good news, I added this in here. The good news is that if we get offers that aren't good enough to validate that commission, the good news is it's always negotiable. Yeah. The price is negotiable and the commission that we pay this buyer agent is going to be negotiable. So I think that's the essence of the shortest possible script. What you've got to walk into in every single, in this case, listing presentation is the notion that one of the 30 to 50 questions people are going to ask is going to be this one. Mm-hmm. Why would I offer this? You don't need to have my answer, but you do need to have an answer that's well thought through. And my challenge to you is to come up with the shortest possible script that you can deploy that answers the question, maybe leaves room for further elaboration, but allows them to want to go down that path with you.
And I think to your point earlier, like you have to be convicted in the path that you're going,
100%.
where you're going, because if that is not what you truly believe in your answer, that's not the shortest possible answer for you.
And there's a lot of change now, guys. So I think it's understandable that some of us are, I wouldn't say wavering, but we're not 100% sure. So you don't even have to develop convictions on one path.
Right.
You can say 2 paths.
Yeah.
But you must have thought that through prior to your listing presentations.
Definitely.
So
definitely. We get a very normal answer, very normal question that sellers are going to be asking. Let's tee up another one. Shouldn't the buy side commission into the list price and increase it by 3%? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well, essentially, yes. That's a decent way to think about it. The only thing we need to be concerned about is that we don't want to price the property so high that we end up with appraisal problems. So the reason this one came up is the way I saw this addressed by our agents was, and there was a spread in the room. Like some people were like, well, I suppose you could do that. But then they really got stuck on the appraisal thing and that could be a problem. And others responded like, well, no, that's not the right way to think about this. You can't. And the reason I think this is crucial is I think this is a perfect example of an objection where we can create an obstacle that isn't.
Right.
So we can say, no, if you do that, you inflate the price and like that's, but the truth is that is how we do things.
Yeah.
The truth is that the 6% or whatever it's been has been baked into the price. And the truth is that if we're only baking in 3 now, they can bake in the other 3 if that's what they're offering. And so what I don't want to do in the mind of the seller is create an unnecessary hurdle or objection or problem. So if there is a reasonable way for them to do what it is they're trying to do, I believe the first answer should be, that is an option.
That is an option. Yeah.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes, no, I wouldn't may be an appropriate response, but in a situation where you're not trying to create that extra roadblock, I mean, that is, yes, a legitimate option. That's
because
okay to
I
say.
do think that this is one rational way to think about what we're doing. And so this one came up. I saw a lot of pushback.
Very defensive, maybe.
I see no reason to push back on this. There's a lot of things to fight. This isn't one of them.
Yeah.
This is a way to think about it. Yeah, in essence, what we're doing is we're going to price the property and just account for this buy-side commission. And then the good news is that the offer comes in low, we can unaccount for it.
Yep.
It will be one of the items that we get to discuss as the offer comes in.
Yeah,
so
it's really good.
A couple of great examples of shortest possible scripts. There's a bunch more in there for sellers. I don't think this is comprehensive, but I think these are a handful
really
of the
good
top
start.
ones.
Yeah, definitely ones that I think our people are definitely hearing right now. So you're going to get during listing presentations. So let's switch to the buy side. Let's do a couple examples with buyers, very real objections that real humans are having in today's space. And I think one that is coming up a lot as you're presenting people with this document is, well, what if I actually don't want a buyer's agent?
Well, I'm guessing that when you say that, maybe what you mean is that not that you don't want a buyer's agent, but perhaps that you don't want to pay for one. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I'm more concerned about.
That's the essence of the response.
Yeah.
Do you not want a buyer's agent? Do you not want representation? Or is there something else that you don't want? So I think that's a great one to internalize and create a natural context for how some of you are going to be a little more direct and aggressive. Some of you will be a little more passive.
A little nuanced.
I took a middle of the road path there.
Yeah.
But you're going to get that. And
and
that's one where if somebody looks you in the eye while you're giving a buyer's agency presentation and you're talking to them about the buyer's agency agreement, and they're like, well, I don't think I want an agent. That's an easy one to get defensive on.
Yeah.
That's an easy one to go, okay, jerk. Because it feels like a middle finger.
Yeah.
But again, let's start with a natural human response. I don't know. I was thinking of Homemakers Furniture. You walk into Homemakers and someone comes to you back in the day when they used to work on commission and they're like, well, here, I'll tour you around and I'll show you all the stuff. And I say, I just want to look by myself. Just, can you leave? I just want to
leave me alone.
That's not what you would say, but that's what they heard. That's what they heard, yeah. And it's natural to feel offended by that. But I guess my thought is, isn't that what most people would want? Like a little bit of space. And so I think that's what they're saying here. They're saying
there's something else.
They're not saying I don't value. They're saying I don't understand the value you represent. They're saying it sounds like I have to pay for this and I have to sign a contract to do that. I agree with you. And all of those are natural, rational human concerns. I think what we need to help the consumer do in this context is help them isolate what it is that they're actually not wanting to do. Because here's the rest of the response. The essence of the shortest possible script is, well, is it that you don't want representation, or is it you don't want to have to pay for it? And if I can get a reasonable response to that, which is gonna be,
I don't really want to pay for it. Yeah.
Then I think the rational follow-on, the elaboration, right, is, well, and I don't want to read it the way it is, but I think it's well written here. What I found with most people is it's not that most people do want representation. Most people do want someone negotiating for them. Most people do want someone finding properties that aren't even on the market for them.
Being loyal to them, having all those things, yeah.
But in this new context, a lot of people are concerned about the notion of having to pay for their agent. Here's the good news. In almost every situation, we're going to be able to negotiate that commission directly from the seller on the purchase agreement, right there in front of everyone. And so the good news is that you can get all the representation that you probably do want.
Yeah.
And in the net, you really aren't going to have to pay for it. And the other good news is that if we can't get it negotiated with the seller that they pay for the commission, well, then you just don't have to buy the house. And everything will be open for discussion at that point.
Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe you do want someone on your side. You don't want to pay for it. Good news is I've got several solutions for you on how we can get that handled that'll cost you nothing in the net. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better. But yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And again, all of that part is important. You got to, but you should be able to have that conversation somewhat organically if you can be locked and loaded with the first one.
And it's really uncovering what they're really concerned about. Like that's why that is a redirect, and understanding what it's a question without a question kind of aspect there.
When you think about all these, in a way, many of them are just ways to get people to think about.
Continue to think.
Yeah.
Because when they're asking the question, they know that they're maybe having those fears, those hesitations, but they can't quite articulate it either. So then again, it's guiding to the pathway, right?
The first time they've done this.
Yeah.
This is not a daily dance for them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's really good. Another one I know a lot of our people are dealing with. We've had a lot of discussions, and so I really like your succinct response on this one. So I've bought homes before, and I've never had to sign anything like this.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's confusing a lot of people right now. But yeah, the reality is that the law recently changed, and this is nationwide, and it's for all realtors, but also for all real estate licensees. And the reality is that right now, every buyer is having the same problem you're having, which is, whoa, this is new.
This is new.
But yes, everyone has to sign a buyer's agency agreement before they can show or tour properties right now. So yeah, that is the law. It is new. Here's some of the document that we need to take a look at in case you have any questions.
Yeah. And I do think there could be some follow-up elaboration from them. Some of these other questions may come up as follow-up that you kind of see in the resource as well when you respond that way. But I really like that you're right. Like that. Right. I like how you're starting there. You're validating that they have this concern because it is probably new.
I mean, for anyone that doesn't have the resource in front of them, what it reads is, you're right, but the law has recently changed. And it's a legal mandate for all agents now prior to showing homes. That is the shortest possible script.
So good.
It is the essence of what you need to have locked and loaded. It really changes your thinking, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%.
And I think what I hope is that for you guys listening that have the resource in front of you and do the legwork to go and write these down, I think it'll make the whole, it's very attainable.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit of homework to do. And there's never been a more important time to do it. I mean,
to actually practice, to actually have an answer locked and loaded.
Well, these are new questions.
Yeah.
And they're new questions for us as professionals, but they're new questions for consumers too. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to approach this entire conversation with a lot of empathy right now. The worst thing we can do is allow our egos or our frustration or our annoyance with the Department of Justice or
set it all
honestly,
aside.
No one gives a crap about those problems. They just want to go look at a house, and they don't want to have to pay a commission that they didn't have to pay before.
Yep.
And those are very human, natural feelings, and you would feel them too. And if you can just start there and then go, so there's only so many things that they're going to come up with. I need to be locked and loaded on these. And it's not locked and loaded. Maybe that's the bad metaphor because maybe we're shooting the ideas out of the sky.
No.
But
it has to be ready. Like, I picture it just being super ready to go.
Maybe you need to picture Cupid. You're locked and loaded with love arrows.
That would maybe be more my style, yeah.
And I hope that empowers you guys to think about it from a different context and then understand the work to be done. There is work to be done right now, and it is thinking these through, rehearsing them, and being locked and loaded.
Yeah.
I did want to cover these tips as well before we wrap this up.
Yep.
and I think they're included in the resource for you guys, but just super succinctly.
Really good. Yep.
1, set your ego aside. This is not about you. These are human beings. 2, keep it simple and succinct. Shorter is better, even though you want to say more. 3, have them locked and loaded. And hopefully that metaphor works for you, but it works for me. The thought that pops out of their head is natural and probably fleeting, but it has to be addressed. If it's not addressed succinctly and quickly, then it's going to evolve into a big debate or discussion or concern or fear that they have in their heads.
Well, and I can see them backing away. Like I literally see them if you have
because they're trying to push pause.
Yeah.
And if you push into that the wrong way, that's where we have breakdown. Next, don't pick unnecessary fights. So when the answer is, that can work, or when the answer is, that can be an option, we don't have to pick all the fights now. If someone's going down the wrong path towards a cliff, then say, no,
we want to guide
we don't want to
it.
do that. That's a bad idea. Here's why. But if what they're saying is, well, could I think about it this way? Or is this an option?
Could I try this first? Yeah.
You know what? That's one of the options. And when we get there, we'll be talking about that more, and I'll help guide you through that.
Yeah.
Don't pick unnecessary fights. And then don't create obstacles or impediments to momentum. So what I mean by this is you kind of got to picture a flow. The sales conversation, and we don't talk about sales a lot here because we're about people and we're about providing value and just guiding humans, right? But ultimately, we are in a sales journey. And there's a series of benchmarks that we need to get through. We need to guide people from here to here to here. And as we move along, there's new questions, new concerns, new human worries. Our job, if people want to buy a home, is to help guide them to not get stuck along the way on something that's going to get them caught up or have them miss out on the home that they want. 100%.
Yeah.
Our goal has to be to address the objection or concern, not to get the sale, but to help keep people moving down the path towards where they want to go. Momentum is key, and that's why anytime you address a great objection with a shortest possible script and elaborate, the next step is to close out with keeping forward. Any other questions, or is there anything else I need to show you here before you can feel comfortable moving forward? Right. And then give reasonable responses to reasonable questions. This is back to the psychology.
Yeah.
You must get that phrase stuck in your head. This is reasonable for a human being to be asking this question. And then I wrote this, remember that you can always walk away. I think that's powerful. I heard once that the person that wins every negotiation is always the one most willing to be able to walk away from the deal. And in a similar way, the person that can win, and win's the wrong word, right? But the person that can overcome any obstacle or objection is someone that's not so married to getting people to a place that they get caught up in the sale.
Yeah.
You don't need this person to agree with everything. You don't need them to see everything your way. And this one might not work out.
Yeah.
So allow the normal human being across from you to ask normal questions, respond with shortest possible scripts that you've thought through, and then unmarry yourself to the outcome.
Yeah.
Because it allows your soul.
It's not your house. It's not your sale. I think that's,
and then you get to have a human conversation.
Absolutely.
So I think those are all key. I hope the resource helps.
Yeah.
I'll say it one more time. This is not the end of the conversation.
There will be more. Yeah.
I don't know how many we've got, around 10 of each.
Yep.
We've also included a shortest possible script and action resource for you that talks through in a little bit more clarity
of breaking apart the pieces of it. It's so good.
There's a process here. We've got to clarify. We've got to validate their concern. We've got to deploy the shortest possible script. We've got to create room for elaboration, and then we've got to keep the ball moving. So hopefully that'll help you guys as well. And I don't think this is the last we're going to be talking about this. And I know we'll be jumping into these specific scripts more in the future.
Yep.
As we think about our policy regarding them and how we're going to answer these questions.
Yeah, I think it's good. I'm just so excited that we are teeing this up with a way for people to have something to say, because I think that's their biggest hang up right now, is not knowing what to say. And then, almost deploying the wrong mindset going into the responses. So I just really like that we've hopefully reframed some of that for everybody, that you can go actually do this and make it easy. Have something ready to go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It's all about mindset. Appreciate you guys. And obviously we're both available if you have any more questions. Thank you for joining us today. For more episodes, resources, and show notes, head to morethanmorepodcast.com.